Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're so excited to have you joining us for this very special LinkedIn Live. It is to celebrate the book launch of ChatGPT for Accelerating Salesforce Development. And I am thrilled to have the 4 authors here with me today. And we are going to take a few minutes to give an overview of the book and then dive deep into some questions. And we've had several people submit some questions, and we welcome you to go ahead and add any comments any questions into the comments area. We will try and take as many as we can towards the end. And if we don't get a chance to do that live, we'll come back and provide some answers after the fact. But I wanted to go ahead and for now turn it over to you, Joseph, and I'd love for you to introduce the team, and then I will pull up a couple of slides so you could share the book before we dive into questions.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. My name is Joseph Kubon. I'm a Salesforce MVP and technical architect. I have been in the ecosystem about 14 years now, and am thrilled with participating in yet what is another technology revolution. I worked in the music business when streaming radio was coming about and got to help in some of that. And this has been a very exciting time. I'm going to hand it over to my friend, Andy Forbes, who helped get our initiative started, and pass you around the room with the rest of us. Andy.
Am I off of mute now?
You are.
Oh, let's see. What is my standard intro? Been doing IT delivery headed into the 5th decade, 3rd decade of doing it with Salesforce, and 3rd of doing it with generative AI. It's pretty much the quick intro from Andy. Philip?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Thanks to everybody who's joined us today, either live or if you're watching the recording. So Philip Safir, I live in Atlanta. I've been in the consulting industry for roughly about 17 years. And I would say I'm a customer experience architect at heart. So, technology is definitely an interest of mine. At the end of the day, though, I'm always coming back to process improvement and business architecture. And I would argue that process improvement is very much what this book is all about. So excited to share with you all today what we've put into this book, and looking forward to the discussion. Paco?
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for joining. My name is Francisco Fálder, or Paco Fálder. I live in Madrid, and I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem and the customer experience ecosystem for about 12 years. And I've always have this passion of making sure that the delivery goes smooth and we can optimize the delivery, and that's why I've been so interested to participate in this project, in this book. And we can see the value of accelerating specifically Salesforce delivery with this book. So thank you very much for joining, and I hope we have a good chat today.
Okay. I think that we are not seeing the PowerPoint slide. Oh.
We see the main PowerPoint app.
Okay. You know what? Why don't we just go ahead and
Sure.
I'll stop sharing here. And Joseph, I know you know this book backwards and forwards. So why don't you give us a high level overview of the book and what people will get from, experiencing it.
Sure. Thank you very much. So the book was born or conceived in the late fall of last year. Andy and I were preparing for Dreamforce, and I had the opportunity to sit down with Andy Berkman from Trailhead and begin to think about how our roles in the ecosystem or in configuring Salesforce, whether you be a product owner, whether you be a developer, an admin, would be impacted by the use of AI. all last year, Andy, really the technical brains behind what we were kind of bring together, bring to light, pushed the team to really explore the boundaries of ChatGPT. And we started to learn, started to apply some of this, and was October or so. And Andy's like, let's write the book, and brought us all together. We wanted to go ahead and do something very fast. Time to market was very important in a revolutionary change like this in technology. Speed and agility is very important. And Andy found a publisher. He said we could put the book together in a couple months. They wanted 6 months. We did it in 2 months. And really from there started to divide and conquer into some of our specialties. Like I am an architect, a solution architect, or enterprise architect now. And I believe in clicks, not code. No offense to developers who love Apex like Paco, and he took the Apex chapters. So we divided amongst our specialties, and we wanted to go ahead and involve everyone and create a very inclusive book where the different roles would learn about the ChatGPT opportunities in Salesforce delivery along the whole life cycle. What would you add to that, Andy?
No, I think you nailed it. I mean, and that's the reason we assembled the team that we have. Philip focused more on user stories and documentation and the process. Paco, hardcore Apex, you on clicks. And I think I just filled in all of the gaps between the three of you.
So that's the impetus, and that's what we hope people glean from this. You may learn something about how to produce a flow or how to produce test classes or documentation, even if that's not your usual role in your particular org or your particular delivery space.
That's fantastic. And it's such an accomplishment. I think so many people mean to write a book, intend to write a book, start to write a book, but very few actually get it published. And it's been how many days since it launched officially and was available for sale?
It was December 29th. It was officially available for sale. So
less than 2 weeks.
Less than 2 weeks. And this morning we woke up to it being in the top 5 on Amazon in AI books on the bestseller list. So we're fortunately all best-selling authors now.
Love it. That's fantastic. Well, I know I just went cover to cover. It was so interesting to see it broken down. I think ChatGPT, all of AI, it's exciting. It's scary. There's so much noise out there. And you all did a really beautiful job of bringing it down to what are the elements that you need as Salesforce professionals and what are some specific use cases and some specific prompts. So I think that was brilliant to just make it so much more accessible. You did a terrific job. So how does it feel to have the book starting to get into the hands of people? We're starting to have some comments about bought the book, absolutely love the user story approach, but how is that feeling? What's the feedback that you're getting?
Philip?
I can take it first. I mean, I would say there's a sense of I would say just gratitude of the reaction. There's so much positivity around it. We obviously feel very strongly about the content that's gone into this. Obviously, we have to be passionate, or we wouldn't have spent the effort to do this. So we're thrilled to be able to share it, and we're thrilled that we're getting a positive reception to it. I will say too that there's also a feeling of uncertainty as well, right? I mean, Joseph kind of alluded to this a few minutes ago. Given how fast the generative AI ecosystem is evolving, right? I will share that we debated on what technology to focus on. I don't mean Salesforce, I mean ChatGPT or something else. And so we were always a bit concerned whether we would hit the market at the right time, with the popularity of ChatGPT as it was when this idea started. And thankfully, I'm glad to see that we're still in the right time period for this to be valuable to everyone that would want to use it.
Well, I think for everyone to know that the thinking around it, the approach, the curiosity, the creativity, and just the use cases, it sparks thoughts around. Well, I didn't think about it in this way. We're hearing the news, we're seeing lots of. It seems like the LinkedIn feed is filled with one pagers that have 3,000 things on it. It's just overwhelming. But I think you've done a great job of breaking that down. I would say one of the challenges is around that technical versus the business goals, and kind of approaching either as a leader, how do you even think about this within your company or with anyone in the Salesforce professional world? Like, how do you even approach that balance between the technical and business? And how could you say that ChatGPT could kind of bridge that gap and bridge that between the business use cases and the technical teams?
Andy, you have some thoughts there, I'm sure.
I do, and I apologize. I'm fighting a cold right now, so I'll try not to cough into everybody's ears. Well, let me start by saying that I'm convinced that in 5 or 10 years, you're just going to say to your personal AI assistant, hey, connect these two systems for me and let me know when it's done. Oh, it's done? Fantastic. Put it into production. So we're definitely headed to a more interesting world. And I think that's what we tried to do with the book. And we didn't really write the book to read it cover to cover. The idea was that if you need to write a user story, if you need to hack out some Apex, if you need to figure out a flow, if you have to debug, you can go to that part of it. And I think that reflects what you're asking, that we are still kind of discombobulated. Everybody has a separate role. And we wrote it that way so that almost regardless of what your role is in a project, there's a chapter that will help you in that role. Not to say that, like I said, our book in 5 years won't just say, it'll be one sentence, ask your AI assistant.
Put it on a fortune cookie.
I think that actually raises an interesting point. It's like, today, ChatGPT, and I would say its competitors, right? The interface by which we can interact with it, right, is single, it's text input output, right? And I know that's changing, right? But at least in terms of what most people are familiar with. So, fast forwarding, maybe it's a few years, maybe it's less, maybe it's more, right? But the idea of being able to just, chat verbally with an AI and accomplish what you want. Or I would, challenge us all to think about, the exciting stuff down the line in terms of as more of this technology gets integrated into our development processes, in our development tools. You don't have to go somewhere else necessarily to accomplish what you want, right? You can ask the tool you're already using, Salesforce or otherwise, right, to actually accomplish what you want. So to me, it's a really exciting horizon. I feel like, our book helps everyone here accomplish what can be done today. I suspect that in the not too distant future, there will be new technologies that we're able to use that are well beyond what we can actually access today.
I will say that I'm waiting for somebody to trademark conversation, not clicks, not code.
You better get on that fast, Andy.
I was going to say.
I need a minute to register the domain name.
Yeah, that is the domain names as it reminds me back 20 years ago of hearing a good idea and going and see, do you have the .com? And it's certainly a wide open. But one of the examples that you have in the book is what can be done around documentation. And I'd love to hear a little bit about how you feel like ChatGPT can be utilized to really elevate the quality of documentation and any practical tips for achieving it.
Maybe I can start with that, and then you guys can help me fill it in. So I would say the biggest caution I would give first is that, at least as it exists today, ChatGPT can help. It's not going to do it all for you. Right. So when I say it can help, what I mean is the quality of the responses that you get are going to be based on the quality of the prompts that you give. some of which, in our book, I think will help to better crafting those prompts to get the better quality. But it's very much dependent on the prompts that are given and the context and data that the tool has. So, I think the theme that anyone who reads our book would see is that the theme is that ChatGPT is more like your assistant that can work with you through each step of documentation, that can work with you to improve your documentation. And the more that it becomes aware of the content, whether it be through prompts, whether it be through data that's shared with it, the better it can help. But at the end of the day, today at least, I wouldn't trust it to produce a document that you'd want to present to somebody. It is not there yet. I think some of the exploration around how you feed data, I think is where I'm particularly excited to see where the technology goes, because as I kind of alluded to earlier, the interface today in terms of prompts, right, somewhat limits what you're able to do. And I think as this technology gets adopted more in the enterprise and data gets integrated into it, I think that's where some of the documentation might 80% write itself, depending on what data exists today. You guys want to add anything else to that?
I think that the key aspects of documentation in any project, right, is leaving behind a record for someone to help figure out what you did at that moment in time, what your thinking is, right? We all have been on projects. We all have a long history in the development space in our careers where we've inherited something somebody else did. And usually when you're executing a project, the thing that seems to be most flexible to every role of if you need to save time in your project is we just won't get all the documentation done. We have to get the code done. We have to go live. We'll go back and document later what we did, because right now we'll spend a week writing down how to do it or what we did, and we'll lose a week's worth of productivity getting it done, and we have to get it live, right? So this, you should be documenting as you go, and it will help make that easier so that you're not left with no documentation. When you're picking up a line of code, will it be perfect? Probably not, but it'll be better, right?
And just to add to that point, we are not talking only about like functional documentation or solution designs. So we are also talking about the documentation that is inside, for example, of the code, right? So you will have also a consistent response from ChatGPT, adding a comment that you have asked them to add with the parameters that you need, with the information that is going to add value to your project or to your engagement, right? So that's very valuable, not only from the business point of view to understand what is the business processes that has been implemented and the solution end to end, but also for a new person, a new joiner of a team that is going to make sure that he understands what he needs to start maintaining or enhancing along the way. Yeah.
I do want to take just a moment and let people know that your publisher graciously offered a 20% discount to those who are live. So I'm going to go ahead and add a QR code. So it's a tremendous book. You can get it for 20% off. You can use the QR code, or also in the comments, there is a link directly to that Amazon page as well. So we're going to continue the questions, but if you want to go ahead and take advantage of it, please do. And I want to move
I'm
to
sorry, not one. We're not going to talk anymore until everybody goes and buys a copy.
What I like best about this QR code is it's blocking Phillips's face.
Oh, it's blocking all of us now.
There we go. All we can see is you now. Love it.
We're a
So,
fun bunch.
so
You
we'll
have to
have
have fun in what you do. If you're not having some fun, then it just makes everything more difficult, right? So
absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the workflow automation and examples of how ChatGPT can significantly enhance that workflow automation and efficiency within systems in general, but certainly the Salesforce ecosystem.
Sure. Paco, do you want to start?
Yes, definitely. So if we, for example, take ChatGPT, if you the good thing is that you can create just the user story and ask ChatGPT to give you the response with the different flows, but you can go one step back and ask what will be the best approach, whether it will be point-to-click functionalities, it will be a custom solution, and that's the or as I see the value in the different roles, right? Because probably you will, if we think specifically about creating a flow, we are going to definitely already know what we need. But if we just started from the start of the delivery life cycle and we just had the conversation with our business stakeholders, we probably want to be challenged of what to build, right? And that's that we what we really found interesting, that it's not about asking do this as an assistant, is as an assistant that can add value to what you thought in the first instance and what it, as the solution of the problem, right?
One of the additional pieces with, when you talk about the workflow or the process, right, and whether it's configuration or helping with Apex, a lot of the automation tools with Flow and the power of Flow, as Salesforce has incorporated it and admins have taken advantage of it, they're now able to build processes in flows that used to have to be coded, right? And that those flows now have to run alongside the code. And so you might find yourself, we have a very real example in the book where you might want to find a prompt where you have to say something like to the chat GPT as if I'm working on a flow and I'm getting the following error. What could be causing the error? What steps should I use to troubleshoot the error? Please recommend some learning or materials so that I can learn how to remediate too many SOCL queries 101, right? That might be newer for an admin, how to deal with bulkifying their code and running alongside of that. And they might not realize that it's not necessarily their flow that's caused that problem. It's that their flow is also running alongside other code on that object or in that process and ultimately producing a problem for them. So it's a learning tool to help you through all pieces of the life cycle, not just the flow of the delivery of your project from I want to conceive user stories and I want to write test cases and I want to do user acceptance testing. It's your role on your project. Am I a BA? Am I a developer? Am I the tester? In an agile structure, you're working and you're thinking about all of those things. Even if you're the technical architect, you're thinking through scenarios of what will happen at some point where X, Y, and Z line up and create a problem. And you can learn how to remediate as well with ChatGPT.
I find that most of the time when people are not using ChatGPT or they have been disappointed with the results, it always seems to come back to not understanding how to prompt in a way that will get you what you need. How did you go about just, this was new technology for all of you as well. I'm sure there's a lot of pain points along the way of getting it perfected to be able to run these in a way that give you the outcome that you want. Can you share a little bit about just your approach and what advice you might have for others? I hope that people will be inspired by the conversation, that it's worth the time to learn how to do it.
Yeah. I'm gonna say one word. It's a one-word answer. Andy. I'm gonna turn it over to him, but it's hats off to Andy. He helped align or orchestrate us so that when we all set up our own ChatGPT environments, it doesn't have a team space, or it does now, I guess, today, right? Yesterday they rolled out ChatGPT for teams. So we were independent, not, different locations around the world, and we had to set up ChatGPT so that it understood the same tone or answers. But really, Andy orchestrated it, so I'll let him tell you how all of that happened.
And it's really pretty easy, which is treat it like you treat a person sitting next to you. If you ask a question and you don't like the answer, tell it you don't like the answer. I see and I apologize, I'm far enough back from my screen. I'm guessing it's Mark Jones. I see a comment. If you go to Stack Overflow and you download something and it's not good, you have to fix it. If you ask ChatGPT a question and you don't like the answer, tell it. That's not a good answer. That's Python, not Apex. Whatever you don't like, tell it to fix it, and it will. That's what's so amazing, is it's truly like having a knowledgeable person next to you. Maybe they didn't quite get the context of the question the first time and they didn't answer the way you expected. Just say that. Just keep prompting, cycle through, and iterate until you get to the point that it either works for you or it's clearly not going to get better, and then work on it yourself. But treat it like an assistant, like a person, not like Stack Overflow or a site you downloaded some code from.
Exactly, and just to and give an example on that regard. For example, I remember in one part of that I was working on was to make sure that the code was respecting field level security in the code itself. And well, I think that last year there were some releases from Salesforce with new ways to do it, more efficient, and ChatGPT was coming with the traditional way of checking one by one whether the user, the context user, was having access to the fields, right, of a particular object. So you just, as Andy was mentioning, you just have to tell ChatGPT, hey, I don't like that particular response. I prefer this new way of producing the code. And the good thing is that it's maintaining that in the context, and every single response that is going to give after that prompt, it's going to be more aligned to what you expect and with a better quality. And there are like hundreds of examples that we have faced during this project and during this book that are similar. It's definitely not something that you are going to see the value straight away the first prompt, but as you go, it's going to add really big value to your delivery, to every single part.
I think the key word that I take out of what we went through is providing context.
Exactly.
The context that you have to give it. I think as Andy said, treating it like an assistant. Paco, you said just keep asking, right? It's the more context you can give it, the better responses that you'll get, right? The more contextual responses that you'll get based on what it now knows.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's amazing is it's just starting. Like someday, very soon, we're going to look back at this conversation and just think it's ridiculous. It'll be so much easier. What's happened in 1 year is just unlike anything I could have imagined. This time last year of just messing around with it, my mind was blown away. But what you can do 1 year later is astounding, and it's just getting started. So it's really interesting. But I think that moves us into this space where people have some fear and there's some ethical dilemmas, and people are using the technology in ways that companies are afraid of, right? Like customers are worried. And I think that's worth having a bit of a conversation around, is what words of wisdom would you have for Salesforce professionals and anyone else, listening to this, about how to approach that from the ethics and the security standpoint?
Well, I personally I like pushing the envelope, and I'm all for getting a car for $1. If you saw a news story this week, someone developed a chat bot for a automaker's website, and they found, or a car dealership's website, and they quickly learned that it was a ChatGPT bot replying, and they started asking it absurd questions, just really absurd questions about politics and religion and whatnot, and then eventually negotiated getting a car for $1. So every sometimes it's fun, sometimes there's a level of responsibility, right? And um, doing things are not going to be perfect, but we can't be afraid either, right? We have to go ahead and take risks. Growth is uncomfortable at times, where you have to learn. We've raised children. Raising children, they learn the hard way. We learn the hard way. You do want to use it for good purposes. You don't want to program a chatbot to hack a bank. Anything. It's all what your intent is, right? And what you think you would want to do or achieve with it. But because it could be used for bad doesn't mean we shouldn't use it at all.
Right? And I think you're right, Joseph. And I think we have to remember that this technology is new. I mean, every technology innovation comes with its own set of risks, right? But we are, at the beginning of what I would say is probably going to be a long transformation journey of this technology evolving, getting better. Some of those guardrails starting to get built into it. But as it is with any technology project, any software creation, right? As creators, there is an inherent responsibility of ensuring that what is built is safe to use, that it works as it's supposed to. That's why we have QA processes in software development and so forth, right? ChatGPT can absolutely help. It accelerates it. It makes it, potentially it helps in ideation, potentially it helps in accelerating time to value, right? It does all these things. That doesn't mean that the quality control and the responsibility of making sure that the product that's created is still good, that responsibility still sits with, for now at least, with us humans, right? And so, I think the concerns around, where it can go rogue are absolutely valid. I mean, there's a plethora of examples out there to be concerned about. At the same time, if one is careful about how they use it, and we don't forget the fact we have a responsibility to the QA side of it, and I think it can be done with measured risk.
Yeah. And it's like any other technology, right? So there are many technologies right now representing similar risks, like deepfake, on top of my mind, right? And it's about putting the right mechanism that makes you comfortable to start using this technology. For sure, if you want to start with ChatGPT in the enterprise, you will have to check to understand what this technology means for your enterprise landscape, to accept the risk or understand the risk and put the control mechanism. But we really see the value on this technology, and we believe that if just for legal reasons or ethical reasons, that can be overcome with control mechanisms, you are going to stop using ChatGPT. Probably you are going to be left behind on the journey. Yeah.
Quick
I have a
sidebar. I think, Joseph, you're going to say the same thing I am. It looks like the discount code is acting up. I used it yesterday. By the way, the publisher makes us buy the books ourselves. It's not like they give us a bunch of free copies. So I ordered like 10 of them, and I got the 20% discount with the code. So if people are having a problem, we'll figure it out and follow up post this.
Hopefully my face is not breaking the code.
Well, I love this conversation, and I hope that the leaders out there that are struggling with this will recognize that even those that aren't in, those of us in the technology space, like, we don't have any choice, right? It's here, you got to deal with it. But there's a lot of organizations that are Salesforce customers that this isn't, their core business. But from a leadership standpoint, your best internal talent and the talent you want out in the world, they recognize that AI related skills and experience will impact their future. And I think for every organization, it's so important that we have a path, that we have, and it may be a different roadmap, but that as leaders, we are owning AI and learning it and working with it and able to really work with our current employees and future talent, because it's here and it's so critical. But let's shift back into the weeds a little bit and talk about mastering testing with ChatGPT. How can ChatGPT be harnessed to really identify testing scenarios and guide the creation of comprehensive test cases? So really focusing on that higher performance and reliability.
That would be for Paco, because I would believe, as an admin, I would make changes in production.
No, you cannot do that in my projects. So yes, definitely. Well, yesterday I had a really interesting conversation to one of my colleagues that is reading the book, and he was telling me, hey, if you create a test class with artificial intelligence, it kind of defies the purpose of the test class. But I mean, depends, right? So you can create it straight away from the user stories, and ChatGPT can create the test class straight away from the user stories, and it will be actually the same way or the same outcome that currently a developer is producing, right? But with the good thing is that it will probably use the best response possible. And if you don't like it, for example, if you just produce a positive test case scenario, you can ask ChatGPT, no, I want a positive, bulkified, and negative scenarios in my test class, and it will again create a context for you to get the best outcome possible for making sure that your code is properly tested and with test classes, and you will not have the typical problems of going to the go live and having someone like Joseph in your team that has created a flow that is making fail the test classes, right?
Perfect. And we do have a couple of questions. Let's see. So one of the questions is, in your work in the book, did you find ChatGPT performing better in certain kinds of tasks?
Andy?
I would say that I got better at asking it to do things. I don't know that it got better. I mean, I don't want to anthropomorphize basically a big chunk of software. So I'm not sure it particularly learned me or my style, but there were definitely times I would be convinced it was learning me and getting better at answering my questions, but chances are it was training me.
Well, and earlier someone mentioned specifically the user stories scenario in the book. Philip, can you share a bit about how ChatGPT can infuse storytelling and engagement into user stories that are tailored for Salesforce projects? And are there specific examples of where it might transform something a little more mundane into something really compelling?
Yeah, I mean, I think the limitations of ChatGPT is truly just it's limited based on the data set that it has access to. So the ChatGPT, utilized for our book, right, is, well, now GPT-4, right? But it is what ChatGPT shows up as if you go to OpenAI and look at ChatGPT. I think, as that continues to evolve and the data sets that are accessible to it, for example, being able to have a data set that is a company's existing business processes, training documentation, systems documentation, right? If it had access to that information, then the quality of the responses would improve tremendously. I'll say that, some of what's covered in the book, and just to kind of go back to your specific question, it's the more context that we were able to give ChatGPT, as we're trying to define, an epic, and then go from the epic to a story and really flesh out that product definition, the more context we could give, the better the responses would be. And iterating through that with the tool, and not, I, like Andy said, I also am trying not to consider ChatGPT to be someone that I'm talking to. But the reality is, it's like you're going back and forth with a computer chatbot that asking it again and evolving the conversation and steering it the right direction. That's how you start to get the better data that you want. Something I think that we found particularly helpful in the product definition, activities is, while it may not have, specific context of the scenario that your specific project or your business or your project trying to execute, it does have a reasonably good understanding of, industries, right? So if, you ask it something along the lines of, I'm trying to define this epic and user story, inventory around how I capture account information for a manufacturing customer, you can actually start asking ChatGPT, hey, what are some of the common things I need to look out for if I'm an account manager at a manufacturer, right? XYZ, right? Fill in the blanks there. And because you've now started to give it more context, you started to say, hey, I'm in the manufacturing industry. I'm this role, I'm doing these things. It doesn't know, Acme Corp from whatever corporation, right? Because it doesn't have that context, at least not yet. But it does understand at least manufacturing, where it appears to. And so that's how I would say where it really can start to give you more robust responses to your prompts. And then you can, in that same chat, you can start to iterate on that information. So the important thing to remember is, like, if I was to go into ChatGPT and to say, hey, I've already written this product backlog, this inventory, I'm trying to write user story 23, help me with user story 23, it's useless, because it has no context of how you arrived at where you are today. It has no context on, even if you give it the 22 user stories before, that's still not enough, right? Just like, earlier in this conversation, we were talking about how sometimes projects don't document everything, right? Well, some of that information is, through conversation. Well, ChatGPT needs that conversation to be able to provide the right response. So, fortunately or unfortunately, as we are today with the technology, you have to give it all that background. And if you give it all that background, then it starts to give the really valuable answers. My hope is, one day, again, like I mentioned earlier, it can just suck up the background based on access to, business documentation that already exists.
One of the use cases that I've found so powerful is asking it to act as an expert. And so if somebody's coming into that user story creation, they're part of a team, but that's not their expertise. It's so great for preparation for meetings or getting through and using the best of what we can put together as a group, and then feeding it in and saying, what's missing? What are the components that I should consider? And just that unpaid expert and some of the best in the world, best thinking in the world you can borrow. And that's sometimes, I think, for those of us in the broader ecosystem, is leveraging it for the areas that maybe you don't know as much, and being able to show up and provide value with your colleagues, or working with a consultant team. In my background in as a brand new Salesforce customer and being in sales leadership and working with the consulting team, I really didn't know what they were talking about most of the time. And I was in meetings, and I just think about today, if I could have just prepared for each one of those meetings and just had such a quick way to have the best in the world, it just would have had such an incredible outcome. So I think sometimes, rising above our day to day and thinking about how can we really find out things we don't know about, or perfect it and find out what we're missing. Having those editors and that, that second board. Let's one of the areas that's, I think, of real interest for a lot of folks is challenges with Lightning web components development, and really the advantages or disadvantages in that space of what might developers encounter when employing ChatGPT for custom LWC development.
Paco.
Yeah, I can take that one, and actually, it's one of the examples that was coming to my mind before when we were thinking on what ChatGPT does better and the context. I remember the first prompt that I was testing about the Lightning Web Component, and pretty much ChatGPT was coming with a response that was a mix between Salesforce and HTML. However, what I started asking, well, you have to use the system design of Lightning, the Lightning system design. And that was actually the differentiator that made really robust the responses related to creating Lightning Web Components that were pretty close to, or not pretty close, but yes, but pretty close to a very high quality of code, right? However, again, it's about providing the right context. It's about making sure that you also know what you need to the input that you need to provide, and once that happens, the developer will be able to find a very good experience with ChatGPT.
So there were a couple of questions that are really specific, but I wanted to, let's see, Andy. So how can ChatGPT help me test what I build in Salesforce? I guess just more high level, if you were coming and speaking to, a group and those general use cases, like how should people think in terms of how can ChatGPT help me test what I build in Salesforce?
Great. That's a great question. Now, if you've ever had media training, you know that when somebody says great question, it means they're stalling for just a moment while they think about the answer. So great question. What I would say, and I think some of the folks there, I see comments over here on the right are seeing this, and that is that we did take a very user story centric approach. So within the context of starting with a user story and then doing your asking for help with configuration, asking for help with code, once you have user story, it's very easy to say, write me a manual test script to test this user story, because people fill that in, right? Testers generally have some idea of how Salesforce works. So when they get, 6 or 8 steps to follow, they generally can. One of the things that extremely powerful to my mind is if you get to step 4 and you don't quite know how to do step 4, you can say, hey, for user story 14, step 4, give me a page of directions on how to look up a debug log. And it will, right there. It'll explain to you exactly how to navigate to the debug log. And then if you look at something in the debug log, you can say, drill down again. What does it mean when I see this in the debug log? Does that mean I'm moving forward with the test, or I just failed? So again, it's an assistant. You have to treat it like an expert at what you're trying to do, and it will absolutely drill down, expand, help you with answers. And that's for manual testing. And Paco talked about test classes for the manual testing. If you use a tool like Selenium, you can also ask it to write the actual Selenium scripts if you want to start doing some automated testing. you need to tell it a little bit about the pages and what's going on under the covers on the page, because it needs those JavaScript names. But if you do that, it'll write pretty solid Selenium test scripts as well.
And just to add on that, because it really goes to you can get to the exact line of the debug log, and then you can ask, okay, I've got this error in the debug log. This is the code. How can I fix the code to make sure that this doesn't happen? But also you can ask, can you provide me a framework, a code framework, to make sure that this type of error are not coming anymore? So it's not only about fixing specific issues that you found on the debug logs. You can go one step beyond and ask, how can I really think on creating this code in a better way with a framework that is robust? So because I'm getting this error over and over. For me, it's very valuable for not senior people to actually get used to do things in a way that are going to make the code easier to maintain and more robust. Yeah.
Ultimately, right? Like, you won't find bigger. Well, you won't find bigger proponents of what ChatGPT can do with Salesforce than us right now. We put a lot of effort into this, but ultimately, I would remind you, like, from a testing perspective, or how do you it will begin to help you build regression testing so that what you finish is stable and you don't have to retest that, right? Any developer's objective should be to do no harm. It's not fix one, break two when they're addressing an issue, right? And it will help stabilize that area. But keep in mind that even as you develop new things and you get some acceleration in your process with testing and ChatGPT, there are things that when you begin to look at it in the whole context of the operation inside of Salesforce, that may break it. There are people who, I'm working on this works. I go to the UI and it doesn't work. And you still have to run the test class to find that the related chatter post functionality is what's broken and keeping your current flow from executing. So it's going to help automate stable things probably in the near term, but it's not going to replace the ability of you have to go look at it and test as a user. It's going to be the proverbial problem of you'll be like, well, it worked for me. Well, you're an admin. You're not the user who's got a reduced security profile in the UI without view all, modify all checked. And that's why it worked for you, but not for them, right? So you have to give it that context.
One of the things I keep hearing, and we're seeing stories and more is hitting the mainstream, is people using ChatGPT to kind of fake out their knowledge or submitting work that ChatGPT did. And I think it's so important right now is transparency. And this is like one of the most powerful tools ever made. It's an amazing, but it isn't something to hide. It's something to use and be very transparent about. So I think that's been an interesting theme to watch play out over especially the last 60 days.
I think you're absolutely right. Sorry, Joseph, go ahead.
My wife is a middle school teacher, a middle school science and math teacher, and these kids turn in work that they get from ChatGPT where they're just like, they don't read it to realize that they don't understand the vocabulary words that were spit out by the answer when they asked ChatGPT to do their work. So like you have to be responsible in that regard, and I think adults when we're professionals in the workplace, we all have that fundamental sense of right and wrong from the ethical perspective of using, AI, so, That's my take. Philip, you were gonna jump in.
Yeah. No, I mean, just to kind of add on to what you said, I think that we've kind of said throughout this discussion, as well as I think what any of our readers would see in the book, ChatGPT is an assistant. It's not gonna at least not yet replace us, right? It's not something where I can go there and just ask it to do my work for me. I can't go there and let's just stick to the context of Salesforce development, right? I can't ask it to do everything for me. What it can absolutely do, though, is solve the problem of a blank piece of paper where I'm trying to define something from scratch. It can help ideate. It can help, to go back to some of the examples that Joseph and Paco were just talking about, right? In terms of debugging something, right? It can accelerate that debugging, because it's not saying we wouldn't get to the same answer ourselves. It's just, it can help us consider ideas and help us evaluate things potentially faster than we might do on our own, right? So, but I think coming back to the point, it's like, it is an assistant. It is not replacing an individual. It is not replacing one of us. It is absolutely check the work before you use it, because going back to, I think, one of the, some of the earlier questions, it's just like the responsibility already exists today, where you wouldn't turn in a document or a set of code or a test case or anything, right, without having reviewed it and done some QA on that content. Don't do that with ChatGPT either. And I think if we all remember that, I think a lot of the risk can be managed relatively effectively.
For me, I find that I now have time to do those sort of the wish list projects, or I wish I had another hour to practice this presentation, or really think about what does this mean, or write that, deeper level. And I just never had time. I've found that I could leverage ChatGPT and other AI to, clear out hours and hours a week of things that just it's not really utilizing my talents or where there's some gifts. And I think that's what I'm excited to watch happen around the world, is just see what people can create and bring to life in a way they just didn't have the technical skills or the time, both of which are now, really close at hand, if not already here. So a couple more questions, and then I could keep you guys here all day. I know everyone would love to keep hearing from you, but Philip, this was a question for you. I have a new project to integrate Salesforce with an SAP system and send changes in Salesforce to the accounts, contacts and opportunities to SAP. Rather than just starting to code, my manager wants the design documented. Can ChatGPT write the design document for me?
That's a great question. I'm going to buy Philip some time. That's a great question.
Do you want to dance and take a glass of water too? No, I think I think first of all, it's very specific, and I don't know that my answer will do justice to the specificity of the question. I will say, though, that we've touched a bit already. I'll expand. ChatGPT can absolutely help in creating that design documentation, or even before design, I would say it can help in expanding the definition, right? Expanding the requirement, the product backlog per se, right? In terms of what it is that the end user actually needs. Design's only going to be as good as the requirement. The code's only going to be as good as the design. I can keep going from there, right? It can help. But if we go back to, what we were talking about a bit earlier about the context and the data that it has, it's only going to be as effective at helping based on the effectiveness at which me or you as the user of ChatGPT, it's all dependent on how effective we are as users of providing it with that context. So I go back to my earlier example of, if I'm trying to expand upon a particular, epic or requirement area, and I'm trying to do a design document, if I'm just going into ChatGPT trying to figure that one out, it's not going to be very useful because it has no context. If, on the other hand, we spend some time to give it the context, if, on the other hand, we've been working with it from the beginning, then I would say, yeah, it can definitely help, whether it be from creating the actual content that you might use in a document, or it may just be as much as helping you ideate through different options, different ideas, things that, again, you may arrive at those same ideas yourselves. It just might take you a week to get there through various conversations, versus you can do that in an hour, with ChatGPT. So again, I don't think I'm going to do justice to the specificity of the question, but hopefully I answered the spirit of it.
Yeah, perfect.
And I'm going to say real quickly, for anybody that has to build an integration, you want to blow your mind? Ask ChatGPT to list every possible way you can build the integration. Start with that, and I just you can throw out the stuff you don't like, but involve it in the ideation. Don't just use it as a coding tool or a tool to write one paragraph. You can say, I got to connect Salesforce to SAP and keep accounts and contacts in sync. List every possible way I could do that.
And not only every single option, but also how do I make a decision? What
pros and cons?
What is the approach that I have to take? And the ChatGPT will give you the list of things that you need to take into consideration to make a decision in those options, right? With that list of options, and that's an amazing value when you are facing a blank paper, right? As Philip was saying before, you probably, as a senior architect, will probably come up with the right response. But once you have to document it and propose it to your customer or to your team, probably you don't want to miss that. You need to think on if it's synchronous, asynchronous, if what is the authentication that you need to have, and so on and so forth. And it's gonna facilitate a lot that work for you and accelerate it.
Now, I would say so many people are wondering how to integrate AI into their LinkedIn profiles, their resume, their experience, their careers. You all have had a chance to be, in the forefront. You were at Dreamforce and saw the 283 sessions. Well, you didn't personally see them, but there was over 200 sessions that were AI related. What advice would you have for those that are, there are very few of us are true experts. So a lot of us are learning and trying to figure out if this is of interest, how to take some step forwards and demonstrate to a potential employer that this is something I'm bringing to the table and I'm interested, I'll learn, I can be part of your team integrating AI into your business operations.
I would. I'm gonna start, and your question is very specific about current skills with AI, but it's the long-standing tradition of be a curious learner, right? Continue to grow that skill set and build an org on your own. Do Trailhead, try it in a dev org, see what you can build. Be curious and learn. Ultimately, everyone there'll be people who are slow to embrace this. It's not too late to begin adopting. Most people may have missed the early adopt window last year or 3 decades ago when Andy started. But you need to be a curious learner. You need to embrace and look at what it can do. You need to become familiar with it. I've often told people that I've mentored over my time in the ecosystem, like an technician's knowledge is an inch wide and a mile deep, because they know a lot about doing what their very specific role is in building and coding, and how do they get that done. And as you move out or branch out, an architect's knowledge is a mile wide and an inch deep, because you begin to expand and learn on how all of these pieces go together. You don't necessarily have to be an expert. The platform is just too vast. There are things about the platform someone asked yesterday that I didn't know. I had to go look up. Holy cow, you really can do that? And having that thirst for knowledge, the openness to embrace change, It is how you will demonstrate your ingenuity and what inspires you with an employer. You cannot fake enthusiasm. Can't. And if you're enthusiastic about it, people will see that that's what drives you and what you can bring to the table. You will inspire others.
I love it. And I want to, you've done, again, congratulations on the release of your book. Hitting in the top 5 is amazing. For those who might be interested in that, going for it and creating a book or creating a product, do you have any advice about how to add that into 2024 and really bring something to fruition?
Be prepared to lose sleep. Guys, what advice? It took a lot, and we condensed, as I said at the beginning, we condensed the time. We wanted to go fast, so we gave up a lot of time outside of our day job to get this done. And it took a lot. Now, like writing a book in general, like there are people like they might need a new book on lightning reports. They might have a 4, 5, 6 month window on rewriting lightning reports. They might need, someone to write a book on the new nonprofit pact that changed last fall. They might take 6 months for that. This isn't the 2-month time frame is an anomaly to get it done. But if you can invest the time and spread it out, there's 4 of us. We divided and conquered.
Yep.
It wasn't we all set aside our egos and said, there'll be 4 authors. We'll share, 3, 4 chapters a piece. It was near the end of the whole process that Andy began to say, guys, we all have to read the whole book. Not just the parts you wrote. You have to know the whole book. Right, Andy?
I think something you said, Joseph, in the earlier question about passion, I think to me that has to be one of the first criteria that someone considers.
Yeah.
Because it is, dividing and conquering, I think definitely helped us accelerate our book on accelerating Salesforce. But it's, it still is a ton of effort. And, and even before, hand to keyboard, pen to paper, authoring a book, it's all the effort that goes into becoming an expert in something, to be able to actually have the knowledge to be able to put it to paper, right? So, having the passion first is, I would say, if anyone listening to this is interested in writing a book and has had an idea burning in their mind that they've wanted to do it, I would suggest if it's still burning in their mind, then they probably have enough passion where it's worth exploring, right? But you have to have the passion for the topic to really, I would say, commit to the effort.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, all of you, for investing this time with the community. It's so much fun to see what was talked about come to life, and you'll start seeing your book covers around LinkedIn and on Twitter, which will be a lot of fun. So please, we'll watch your journey. Those of you, please purchase the book. The link is in the comments. There's also a code that I added if there's an issue. If you tried to purchase it, it's still not working, please leave a comment, send me a DM, and we'll get it sorted out and make sure that you can enjoy that 20% discount. And best of luck to all of us in this AI season. And we will look forward to another time together. So thank you all, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you very much.
See ya.
Take care.